Hello, I'm Farah Nazarali. I'm a yoga teacher and self care expert. And I'm thrilled to just be in conversation today with Glynnis, a dear friend and also a self care expert.
Beautiful. Farah, this is my favorite thing. Yes, thank you. It's so good to be here chatting with you. I would also consider myself a self care expert. So we're in good company. And, with our years of Ayurveda and yoga and bringing that to our lives and sharing it with others, it's amazing.
So, Glynnis, was there any moment that you had a realization, or have there been many moments where you've had the realization that self care must is a necessary part of life?
Oh, Farah, that's such a good question. Um, I think my realization actually came in a more mature way later on. And what I mean by that is when I actually started seeing the impact of having a practice and the impact of not having a practice. And because we kind of we flow in and out of that in our lives, no matter how devoted and dedicated we are, there are always times that just throw us off our course. But I think the very early days of my life in advertising, where literally 15 to 18 to 20-hour days, um,
Crazy.
yeah, for years on end, which for me would culminate in a very strong yoga practice, actually, because that was my sanity. And I think that was where I actually first connected that yoga was my self care place, and then some of the other things that came later. But Farah, it came from extreme, you could say, crisis, chronic abuse of my sleep, of all the daily practices, working those kind of hours in a very stressful environment. So yeah, I'd love to actually ask you that same question.
You know, I agree. I think we humans sometimes we're motivated uh, in a positive way, but most of the time, what motivates us to change is actually a crisis. And for me, I was inspired to practice yoga regularly. However, it really wasn't until very recently where um, my partner was diagnosed with a very serious health crisis that I really got serious because there was no other option. I needed something to really anchor me in myself, and I needed something that would build up my physical and emotional resilience. And I've always felt that yoga is the practice that really works on so many different levels and layers. And so for me too, crisis brought me to commit much more to my practice. And I would also say, when I experienced insomnia for the first time in my life, I turned to some of the practices in Ayurveda to really help me get my sleep on track. And the value of those practices, I, I swear by them, because sometimes when I don't do them, I can notice the impact they're having. So sometimes you do them and then you think, oh, I don't need it anymore, and then you drop it away and notice the difference of not doing it. So you're totally right. I think that um, doing a practice and not doing a practice both can help commit us to keeping those things in our lives that keep us healthy.
Yes, absolutely. I so resonate with everything you said, because I think a big part of it is that we is the noticing of the pain that we suffer when we don't do the practice, but also the benefit of the accumulation and that sort of muscle memory of that self-care practice that really actually does serve us, even if we are in crisis and we don't have either the time, the energy, the mental capacity, the physical stamina, whatever it is, to show up for our self-care practices. It's at those times that we actually also notice how our years of practices, adding up day by day by day, really hold us in good stead for those times that we can't show up for them. And then, with that, we get, yeah, and this is why I love Ayurveda, because it's so scheduled in a way with the seasons. Spring shows up, a season shows up, and we get an opportunity to recommit. And so if we have kind of missed practices for a while, or if we've been very devoted, we can really strengthen them. And this is, for me, this is sort of the idea of a healthy longevity, is to have a steady foundation of practices that you can really draw on daily, but that also can hold you in good stead when you are not available for them. They're always available for us. That's the beauty of it, and Ayurveda kind of guides us on this journey very gracefully to remind us.
You mentioned a daily schedule in terms of Ayurveda. Um, what does your daily self-care schedule look like these days?
Oh, wow. Well, you know, I'll just start by saying this is built up over the years. So, anyone who's just starting out with a self care practice, this can seem, I'll say, a little bit intimidating. But bear in mind, I've been doing these practices, building them up for over 20 years. And so now the most important thing for me, it's at the very top of my non negotiable list, is my meditation practice. Without that, that is the foundation for everything. So I do get up really early, 5 a.m. most days. There are days where that doesn't happen if I've kind of, stayed up a little too late, or other things have kind of called my attention. But I meditate for about 45 minutes to an hour, which includes a type of energization exercise that I do. And that is the very first thing that I do after I scrape my tongue. So I get up out of bed, I do a little sort of energy scan, go to the bathroom, scrape my tongue, because, that stimulates digestion. It kind of gives a signal to the body that we're about to begin our day and we're ready for elimination and all the other bodily functions. And then I will have my hot water and lemon ready. Farah, one thing I've learned is preparation is key to a successful showing up for your practices. So, and this has been a little bit more recent, where the night before I actually get my hot water ready in a flask. I put a little piece of lemon in on top of the thing so that I can pop it in the morning. So that's all ready. And these are some of the practices that have been, on my sort of my daily schedule for many, many years. The tongue scraping, the hot water and lemon, and then I meditate. And then after that, I'll either go for a walk, which usually is about an hour, and I'll come back and I'll do some stretching, maybe some yoga. Truthfully, though, lately I have kind of fallen off my yoga practice a little bit, so I do some stretching. And I'm really excited for the spring cleanse that we're going to be doing together, because it re-energizes me to get back into that yoga in a more intentional way. So those, and then there's oil pulling. So I do that as well. So just with coconut oil usually. Those are my main morning practices. And honestly, when I don't do them, which is rare, I feel a little bit off kilter that day. Yeah. So thank you for that question. And I'm really curious as to what your daily practice is. And I know that, we've been friends for many years, but there are nuances, right? And things that we bring in, and also things that become deeper as we practice more. We find that taking 2 to 3 hours in the morning for our self-care is not too much. It's, so I'd love to know what your latest morning routine is.
I highly recommend a morning practice for people to take time in the morning. whether it's 10 minutes or 30 minutes or 2 hours, because how it sets you up for the day is so much better than the other alternative of listening to the radio or reaching for your phone or turning on your computer or checking email or starting your day with coffee. So 100% I'm on board with starting with something in the morning. For me, I also prepare hot water the night before in a thermos. And so I get up. I irregularly on and off practice oil pulling. I drink my water and then I do my yoga practice. And I love to do it in the morning on an empty stomach because it's really the only time that your intestines and digestive tract are actually empty. At no other time during our waking hours is digestion empty, is the intestines and stomach empty. So you can really do twists really well in the morning before you eat. So I do my yoga practice, and then my partner and I have recently incorporated singing a prayer in the morning. So we meditate, sometimes 10 minutes, sometimes 20 minutes. We sing a prayer together, and then we start our day and have breakfast together. And in addition to the morning practice, I really try to include time in throughout the year where I can immerse and be with others who practice. Sometimes, our own practice is strengthened when we're in the company of other people who have a very dedicated practice, and it has a impact in inspiring us even more. So I like to spend time with others, ideally on a retreat or in a group setting or something like that. Um, I also really appreciate hydrotherapy on a regular basis. I find that it's really uh, a wonderful, gentle, um, pleasant way of stimulating the lymphatic system and detoxifying the skin. And it feels so good to be immersed in water.
Mm.
And the other thing that I include in my daily practice, daily commitment is being outside in nature, oxygen, walking, sunshine, light, being in contact with the elements. It's not only good for our lungs and our bodies, but for me, I notice for my eyes to have natural light coming into my system rather than artificial light makes such a difference. So, and I think you're right, Glynnis. The time we spend may seem intimidating. However, there's always ways that someone who's new or someone who doesn't have that can take a part of that and start with 10 minutes of meditation or 15 minutes of yoga stretching, right? Or drinking water before they start drinking coffee.
Yes, yes. Your practice really is inspiring, and it's so like you to share that with the benefits attached. This is the beauty of you as a teacher is that that comes across so clearly and beautifully, and I appreciate that. And you also inspire me and remind me that to share our practices is really helpful and uplifting. And as you say, even if you're just starting out, honestly, we all started somewhere. And in fact, we're all starting on something. We're all beginners at something in our life, even if we're taking on a new practice. So, there's, um, if there's no time, 5 minutes is better than no minutes because they add up over a week, over a month, over a year, over a lifetime. And so these are the important things. And, actually, when you were talking about hydrotherapy, I'm like so ready for some hydrotherapy. But one of the mainstays that is a very big part of my practice is the what I like to call the soft practices. And I call them that because honestly they don't take much to do. They actually are very pleasurable. It doesn't feel like you're having to be disciplined here. It's a kind of self-pampering, self-nurturing, self-care practice. And that oiling, I don't do it every single day, but during certain seasons I do more than others, is the self-oiling of the body, the abhyanga, the self-massage before hopping into a shower, getting that oil in the body. There's so many benefits. And honestly, I have noticed a shift from, many years ago, a shift in my skin, in the tonal quality of my muscles, the flexibility, even when I am feeling a little bit kind of stiff, if I haven't moved as much as I'd like to, this beautiful kind of self-oiling, oh my, it's delicious and divine for one thing. And, using essential oils in there, every time I'm feeling exhausted from overexertion in whatever area, I go to that. That's kind of like my go to, is to just do the self oiling of the whole body, head to toe. And that too can just take 5 minutes and be life changing. So, these kind of self care practices that we're talking about are really accessible. And, from day to day, year to year, we do different ones, but there are definitely some that are supremely important to our vitality, just feeling good about ourselves, basically, on a
You,
very, very basic level.
I had a young mother who, sometimes I do workshops for specific groups, and there was a group of young mothers, and certainly having one child or having children, having a family and the responsibilities really can put a lot of pressure. However, everyone showers and we shower regularly, and you can extend your shower time by just 10 minutes and have a different approach in how you use that time so that you're not doing it to get it done. It's like, okay, here's your self care time. Just extend it a little bit. Add, you know, abhyanga and self oiling of the body to your shower time. And it can completely change. And it's not adding anything new, So I love that you shared that, because I've also found that oiling is such an incredible way of nourishing the body and the skin, and building a sense of confidence in our bodies and how they are.
Mm. Yes, yes, that's the key word, that confidence. Yeah, it's beautiful. I'm so you know, enlivened just to talk about this because, it's reminding me and us of the spring that's coming up and how we're starting to crave more self-care after maybe hunkering down for the winter, the fall and the winter, and feeling a little heavier. This is how our self-care practice also serves us, is that we reach toward a new season like spring and start to kind of recalibrate and reset our intention for our self-care.
And how does spring change things up in terms of your self care?
uh, you know every season offers a different energy. And in Ayurveda we talk about the five elements and the qualities of those elements, and in the springtime these are damp, they're cool, they're watery, and also earthy. So they're akin to what is known as the kapha dosha, or the kapha elements, which is water and earth. And they're also heavy, believe it or not, even though we think, oh, springtime. So we need to start looking at how to start bringing bitter foods into our diet, along with our pungent foods, the spicy foods that we've been eating in the winter time to keep our immunity strong, um, we are lightening up our meals. So we're having more greens, more bitters. We're still having warming food so that we don't kind of dampen our beautiful digestive flame. And we're moving. We're wanting to energize this heaviness that's accumulated because what's happening is that everything's melting. There's a beautiful analogy to the snow that melts with the spring and the crocuses that emerge with our body. We totally reflect the season and our environment. And so, personally, I wake up, a little bit earlier in the spring, and I start maybe adding more bitters. We haven't had too many microgreens and salads yet, but not too much. So you really have to balance the food intake because you don't want to have too much cold food, but you're starting to crave like greens. I don't know if you are, but I'm totally craving more salads, more greens, even smoothies. Um, so, lightening up in that way, but also energizing, invigorating type foods, and eating less, truthfully, like starting to really look at what one anjali means, which is this basically. This is one serving size. That's how big your stomach is. And that's how much food to eat at per meal so that you can really digest well. And honestly, self care for me personally, because food is a big factor in my life. I get great joy out of cooking and creating and eating. And so, using this change in season to really focus on self-care with my eating practices and nurturing myself with these shifts. So there's more elixirs and tonics and things that are like springtime bitters, that sort of thing. There's a big focus for me on this shift as far as our eating practices go for my self-care.
Mm-hmm.
How about yours, Farah? Like, because you're, you know, I know I've been in your kitchen and you are an amazing cook. And I feel that you're a very intuitive cook. So, looking around at what's in your pantry and perhaps there's still some things in your garden. How are you shifting with the season?
I look forward to spring so much because I feel like in the wintertime, there's such a limit in what's available. I really try to eat according to the seasons. And so in the wintertime, the root vegetables, the onions, the squashes, the carrots, the beets, the cabbages and cauliflower. But you get to spring and suddenly it expands
Mm,
suddenly, and you get all these different vegetables. You get the lettuces and the greens um and then like radishes and peas and so I so look forward to spring. We're so lucky here on the West Coast because we can still grow actually a lot of vegetables from fall can take us over into winter, but there's this 4 to 6 week period where we're really relying on food from California or food from Mexico or food from Israel or food from somewhere else. And so what I love about spring is going to the farmer's market, seeing what's available, and then starting to adjust my meals accordingly, and you're totally right. In springtime, the color green is so much a bigger part of every meal.
mm,
And it's so wonderful to have more fresh foods. It's so wonderful to have more a variety of foods, and to have foods other than just soups and stews and some of the things that we have over winter. So for me, it's the season I look forward to the most, actually. And the other thing that I'm just amazed. You know, the trees they look dead. The branches look entirely dead, dry, lifeless, like there's no life in it. And somehow there's a process, a chemical process happening in the soil as a result of taking in light from the sun. And then suddenly you see new growth on these deadless trees. And for me, what inspires me about spring is the renewal of Mother Nature that I feel I feel like somehow it renews me somehow, because I feel inspired, I feel energized, I feel more in touch with the miracle of life. You know, in wintertime, it's a little bit harder for me to have that kind of hope that naturally comes when you see a cherry blossom tree, you know, or that beauty. So for me, it's more a energetic and psychological renewal that I feel comes in springtime that I'm so ready for.
Mm. I love that. So beautifully said. Oh, yes. Yeah, the renewal, the hope, along with, the faith again that, we get another opportunity to go deeper, refine our practices, and also pay attention. So there's an awareness that happens with spring for me that, it's kind of a new time, a new awakening every single time. Isn't that amazing? Even though it's the same, we expect spring to come, but we don't know what to expect as far as what new things we're going to learn about ourselves and how we interact with the world and nature and the seasons. And, our own body's changing. That's happening at the same time. So it's sort of to have that curious attitude about it is what spring represents to me. The body, noticing the body and the changes and the things that we crave and need and what really feeds and nourishes us. Really noticing that that's like a new experience every single spring, something unexpected in a way. So yeah, it's really exciting for that reason if we look at it that way.
Absolutely, absolutely exciting. And you know, you've been cleansing on a seasonal basis for many, many years. What um what inspires you, or what is it that keeps your commitment steady and strong to continue to do it? I mean, do you ever stop needing to cleanse?
No, no, I feel that that comes back far to how we, began this conversation is the noticing of the evolution of healing, well-being, um, the subtle nuances and shifts, the what I call polishing the rock. There are all these rough edges that come at us from external or internal sensory perceptions and all the things that come at us. But I think, it's such a deep part of, that inner knowing. Once you go on this path, that inner knowing is really polished. It's really um, nurtured, and it that nurturing itself really feeds your own inspiration to know what is good for you. And even though sometimes we resist that, it's so innate. It's so much a part of us that, and I feel like it's so much a part of me that if I never miss doing a spring cleanse, even if I do it in a tiny way. I've done much bigger ones where I've actually, gone away to an Ayurvedic uh, cleanse retreat center, or, I've been to so many over the years and taken longer time, done deeper practices. or, doing the home practice. But it feels strange to me, the thought of actually not doing one, because, things do accumulate. I mean, whether we're living the finest life of pure, pure eating, pure thinking, all of the practices, right? The yamas and the niyamas. Um, Whether we're doing the right things or not, our body is still participating in the very real external impact that we're absorbing. And so we cannot control that, actually, unless we lock ourselves away in a, kind of a sanitized bubble, but that is not healthy either. No sunlight. So, yeah, we need to cleanse the tissues, the organs, the mind. This is not just a physical process. I know that if I don't do a spring cleanse, I notice it in the summertime. And I can't remember the last time I didn't do a spring cleanse. So, but I know in earlier years, and I see others around me who just kind of move into the next season without paying tribute to the dynamic shift and change and energy of the body and the mind. So for me, it makes sense. It's part of being aligned with nature.
I was just going to say, I think about how nature is such a greater force than ourselves and how it's such a missed opportunity. It's such an auspicious time where what you do is supported by Mother Nature. There's a way of you aligning yourself with a greater force that I would say the impact of cleansing at spring is far greater than if you cleanse at any other time. So why wouldn't you cleanse at spring? You know?
Yes, absolutely. And in Ayurveda, it's very organized, intelligent, and specific because, as I mentioned earlier, things are melting, the snow is melting. Internally, our bodily tissues are actually replicating what's happening on the outside in the springtime to allow toxins to release. This is like a window of opportunity. And if we miss it, we miss it. So, with the body actually having very, very specific functionality to help us to cleanse and detoxify the liver, all the 7 tissue layers of the body are actually preparing to melt away the toxins. And even, as I said, if you have a very clean lifestyle, clean diet, these toxins are not just what you eat. They're from external impressions. They're from the thoughts that we think. That is not to be sort of taken lightly, that these mental toxins also accumulate. And yes, that nature is giving us this grand opportunity to do it along with its own amazing energies and activities and functions. So why wouldn't we indeed? So I'm really glad we are. And I'm also so beyond excited to be doing this in community. You mentioned very early on in our chat that doing your yoga practice or your self-care practice in community makes it that much stronger.
It amplifies it, absolutely. It's so encouraging, when you hear stories of other people and maybe the resistance they've overcome or the obstacles they've overcome or the things they're doing that maybe you didn't get to. I always find that those things really create a field and inspiration that actually allows us to commit even more, allows us to gain even more. And it's very different from doing it on your own.
Absolutely. It's so different. And so, Farah, what would you say, if you were just advising someone doing a spring cleanse for the first time, how would you guide someone in as maybe the most important? I always call them the non-negotiables. It's sort of like if you're going to only choose 3 things, how would you how would you give them that sort of invitation? Because it can be so overwhelming with all the information that comes at us all the time. And a lot of it is dietary, but this is a so much more holistic um, practice.
Here's what I here's what I would say. Um, I don't know if I've ever done anything perfectly. I just do things. And when you do something repeatedly, it gets easier. There's less resistance, there's more familiarity, there's more comfort. So when you commit to something and you do it over again and again and again and again, and next year and the year after and the year after, it becomes possible to um, to do it in an ideal way. But at the beginning, you just do it as best you can, and that in and of itself is a success. For some people, it might be just registering for the cleanse, and maybe they don't get to it, but maybe next year or maybe at another time they open it up and say, okay, now I'm ready. So what's most important is just to do it as best as you can, and know that there's only one realm of perfection, and that's the realm of the divine. And we have glimpses of it sometimes, maybe when we smell the fragrance of sandalwood, or maybe when we see a cherry blossom bloom. But we're not perfect. So we just do it. And the important thing is, do it more than once, do it every year.
Oh, I love that so much. That is everything. That is it in a nutshell. Yeah. It's how we learn, as humans. If we do approach things in a way that we expect perfection, then we find resistance along the way. So that is so beautifully said. I love that. Yeah, and it's we've seen this ourselves, because this is going to be, I think this is our third spring cleanse that we're offering together. We have seen this with our beautiful community that is growing, because each time they're noticing that it's the coming back and the recommitting to that imperfect practice that actually starts to really make a difference. Yeah. So it's just showing up for yourself in that way. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Speaking as a pitta perfectionist, yeah. Having learned this lesson time and time again.
I often think we make progress, not perfection. And as long as you're making progress, so I think it's good to strive, and strive out of our comfort zone. And I think it's good to commit, and to commit to something that that stretches us a little bit. I think that's important. And I also know that committing to something repeatedly is very powerful. And I think that's more what we're talking about here is, okay, you'll participate to what extent is possible, but next year it'll probably be a little bit easier for you to participate a little bit more.
And even for the seasoned cleansers, every single time, and this is beauty. It was kind of like the curiosity of spring I was talking about. The beauty is that no matter how many times you do the same practices, you will find that little opening more every single time. I'm absolutely sure you can attest to that, and I certainly can. That no matter
Meditation and practice, it's never the same. Absolutely. Never the same.
and truly neither is a good self-oiling. You will discover something new about yourself, your body, your desires, your needs, all of these things, your pain points, your good remedies, your good medicines, these things show up only because you show up time and time and time again in that imperfect way. I love it.
Well, this is an invitation for those of you listening to join us this spring for a 7-day Ayurvedic spring cleanse, which includes yogic practices, a yoga video that's filmed in nature, and it is a very, very comprehensive cleanse. Anything else you want to say about what is offered and the invitation here?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, you just mentioned the yoga practices, and I just get excited because the daily yoga practices with Farah in nature are sublime, and then the Ayurvedic practices they are very guided, very well kind of described, and Farah and I show up on Zoom to support the community. I think it's almost daily actually that one or either one or both of us are showing up on Zoom at a certain time to really connect with everybody and see how the community is doing, to check in. But it's these simple, very powerful practices of Ayurveda that are shared on a daily basis, along with kind of a daily inspiration. And truly, you feel as though we're in one big, beautiful space together doing this in community. Um, there's recipes, there's a shopping list that is very clear and simple. So everything is made super easy for you to follow along. And the feedback is unbelievable. We've witnessed some incredible shifts and gratitude. And yeah, it's so please do join us. Every time it gets better and better and better. So yeah, it's March 20th, which is the spring equinox. It's a Sunday, which is our opening circle. And then we spend 7 glorious days together, step by step, guided by myself and Farah. And yeah, just to notice some shifts and transformations, to take that first step to the self-care commitment.
I'm so looking forward to it. I've been looking forward to it for a few weeks now, and so looking forward to doing it with you, Glynnis, and with so many others, and so looking forward to the mental cleanse piece of it.
Oh, yes, yes. Same here, Farah. It's a delight of my year. And honestly, since we've been doing this together, it's really elevated my practice and my commitment and our community. So thank you. And it's just so delicious to be chatting here with you about this.
Join us, Spring Equinox 2022.
Thank you.